Yeah, so my story about suicide. So I, as an undergraduate in the early 2000s, came across an opportunity to be a volunteer crisis counselor on the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline through an organization at the time was called Headquarters Counseling Center. And I responded to that. So I went through, the training program. It was about 11 weeks, about 100 hours. Made some really great connections with the folks who were doing that work at headquarters at the time, and felt really good about the skills that I had learned, what I learned about listening to people, what I learned about kind of being there for people, when they were having these painful experiences. So I wrapped up that training probably like in December of 2005. And then in May of 2006, a guy that I had known since I was in the third grade, since I moved to Leavenworth with my family, killed himself right before graduation week at KU in 2006. And that was a gut punch to myself and to our entire friend group. So I think that one of the important kind of pieces of context for that is that we graduated with about 36 people in my graduating class from high school. So it was a very tight-knit community. My friend John and I had gone through a lot of times together, I guess I will say. And I knew that he had struggled with his mental health, and I knew that he drank quite a bit to cope with some of the things that were going on. And I knew, from this space of, I think it feeling kind of normal and not really being able to think about the things that I knew from my training for the NSPL in the context of my relationship, right? I didn't have that I didn't put those pieces together. And I don't think no one expected that I personally would save him, right? And I would never tell anybody that they were personally responsible for anybody's safety. And I struggled a lot with guilt and shame around the fact that I hadn't been able to be a better support for him, and that he had ultimately taken his own life. It was and is still, I think, the suicide loss that hurts the most. It definitely triggered my own depression, which is something that I have lived with. I've lived with depression and anxiety for a really long time, still live with depression and anxiety. But it was not actually until John's death that I had my own thoughts of suicide for the first time. And my own thought of death being an answer or an escape or a way to end that kind of turmoil and pain that I was experiencing, and that seemed appealing. And so, it took a long time, I think, to get to a place where I could kind of have some reflection on all of those pieces and how my own mental health and the loss of John and our friendship and kind of how all of those pieces fit together. I do know that my work on the NSPL, because I did go back, right? I went back and started answering the phones, and that was an incredibly important part of the healing that I did from that loss. It turned out that I needed to be able to be active in some way, and to feel like there was some impact that I could make. And I know that one of the reasons that I have continued in suicide prevention, why this is my career at this point, is ensuring that folks have access to information and an ability to have some comfort and some skill level in being able to have conversations about suicide. That all draws directly from the loss that I experienced, that from John's death. That's the thing that drives this work for me and has for a really long time.